Hello, my name is Joshua Heaney and I'm a saxophonist and educator. Today I'm coming at you from Bowling Green State University, where I am actually pursuing my doctorate of musical arts and studying saxophone with Dr. John Sampin, with a review of a new product from Yanagisawa, the SC120 Classical Soprano Mouthpiece. Now, just like the alto saxophone version, this is a new product for Yanagisawa. They've historically had all-rounder or more jazz-oriented mouthpieces, with their hard rubber soprano mouthpieces in the past, so this is a cool area for them to explore with a brand new product. If you've seen my review of the alto saxophone SC120 version, there's going to be a lot of things in common, so I'm going to try to eliminate those commonalities and focus on just the things that make this saxophone mouthpiece unique compared to the rest of the lineup. So first things first, just like the alto saxophone version, Yanagisawa aims for this mouthpiece to have a homogeneous tone, quick response, and be really at home in a symphonic setting. On paper, this mouthpiece is about 1.2 millimeters in tip opening, or about 0.047 inches at the tip. Now, this is very similar to an S90 170 or an S80 C-Star kind of opening. Very comfortable, nothing too crazy. A unique aspect of this mouthpiece is the precise shape of the window and the way that that relates to the tip of the reed. I think it's more of a drastic V shape than I've ever seen in any other soprano mouthpiece. I haven't really seen this affect playability in any way, but surely it contributes to the final product in some way, and it's really interesting. The chamber and throat are very similar to the alto saxophone version, featuring a standard round chamber with a small squeeze going into it with the same kind of characteristics of the alto version. And also like the alto version, the packaging consists of this expandable tube, which, while I'm not crazy about, is functional and it does protect the mouthpiece and serves its function just fine. When playing this mouthpiece, I thought it had a very interesting character to it and had a little more resistance than I was expecting, because if you recall, the alto saxophone SC140 version was extremely free-blowing and didn't have much resistance to speak of, maybe needed a harder reed, or perhaps I would have preferred a more open tip. I also found that it felt like I expected, meaning that at a 0.047 tip, you have a certain expectation, and this seemed really to line up with it. It didn't feel more resistant, less resistant, more edgy, less edgy, or something crazy. It really was a very pleasant experience and matched up with just my preconceptions. I think this is a really interesting mouthpiece, and I'm not doing a very good job of describing it, so how about I just play some for you and let the mouthpiece speak for itself. So before we dive in too deep, I want to remind you guys of my process when I test these mouthpieces. First, I have my standard mouthpiece, which is a Selmer S90 170. That's very similar to a C-Star opening. I find this mouthpiece to be very neutral, yet flexible and friendly, and works really well with my instrument. On the other hand, I will have the SC120. Both of these mouthpieces will be played with a Vandoren 3.5 reed, the same reed, one that's not too old and not yet broken in and adapted to a mouthpiece, and everything will be held together with my Ishimori pink gold soprano prototype ligature. Honestly, they should move this thing out of prototype because I think it's a great product. And all of that setup will be used in combination with my Selmer Series 3 Soprano Saxophone. Just like the alto version, I find it to be a relatively neutral horn that's easy to play and very comfortable. Now, it has some quirks, obviously, because sometimes these Series 3s can have a little bit of a gurgle in the right hand. I find mine doesn't have this issue too often, but it is a little bit mouthpiece dependent. Alright, enough chit-chat, let's dive right in. Well, those were two very different mouthpieces, so let's break it down a bit. First of all, I found that the Yanagisawa had a little bit more resistance in comparison to the Selmer. This is unusual because with the alto saxophone version, I thought that was exceptionally free-blowing, and then this was a little bit different. This resistance was primarily located in the long horn. And what I mean by that is notes like middle D, middle E, F sharp, and it also extended a little bit into the bell keys like C and B, but not nearly as pronounced as those middle notes like D and E. The altissimo was pretty good as well, although I did find it to be slightly easier on the Selmer. This may be a byproduct because of the different facing lengths between the two mouthpieces. The Selmer has a longer facing length, which encourages you to take in a bit more mouthpiece, whereas the Yanagisawa has a little bit of a shorter facing length, which encourages you to take in a little bit less. I think this affects the way that I play altissimo and soprano, but then again, there's many ways to play altissimo and soprano, so if you prefer to play with a little bit less mouthpiece, that'll be good for you. In general, I found the tone to be very pleasant, well-rounded, and also not too bright, yet not stuffy and dark. I thought there was a pleasant projection, in spite of the fact it's still a very full sound. I think it's a very nice combination of having that full tone and really filling out the soprano sound, while also being able to project it back the hall. Sometimes younger players have issues with the soprano sounding a bit oboish or a bit shawmish, a little too conical. So if you want a mouthpiece that really rounds out the sound and makes the sounds more saxophony and maybe give you a bit of a leg up in that regard, this is a great mouthpiece to consider. Tonally speaking, I find the square-chambered Selmer mouthpieces like the S90 and the S80 to be a bit more centered on this side, and then on the other end of the spectrum, you have the Vandoren Optimum mouthpieces, which are very rounded and very pleasant sounds. I think that the SC120 lays somewhere in the middle, and it's a very nice place to be. I think it's a very nice place that most people will like. In general, intonation was not much of a problem at all. However, on my horn, I found that the Yanagisawa played a little bit sharp in that middle register, such as middle D, E, and F sharp. Now, sopranos are extremely sensitive to matching up mouthpieces, so perhaps my horn just prefers Selmer mouthpieces. This might not be a problem on Yamaha or Yanagisawa. I also found in the altissimo register for the notes to actually tend to be a little bit flat, and I think this is just because of the facing length and the way that I play altissimo. I like to have a lot of mouthpiece and really put a lot of air through the instrument, so maybe I just wasn't compatible up there. Overall, I thought that the Yanagisawa was quite a pleasant play. It's not for me because I like having a more centered sound, and I find that the Selmer mouthpieces just work better with my horn. There was less struggle in that middle register, the intonation was a bit more even, and the response in general was a little bit more even, and that's not necessarily a mouthpiece problem. If you play a Yanagisawa soprano next to a Yamaha soprano, next to a Selmer soprano, you'll find that the feel behind the horn, the resistance, the way the air moves through it is incredibly different. I think this particular mouthpiece is very well suited to Japanese sopranos in particular, especially those by Yanagisawa. Yanagisawa sopranos tend to be a little bit darker of a sound, and I think this would liven them up and still maintain their round, dark characteristic while giving them a bit of projection and keeping that even tone. I think the mouthpiece is actually a pretty good value as well, because it comes in around $130, and that is really comparable to what Selmer is asking for at a C-Star and what Vandoren is asking for an SL3. And then if you look at the ultra mouthpieces like a Selmer Concept, those are running over $200. I think this Yanagisawa should be a definite contender if you're shopping around for mouthpieces. So there you have it. Those are my thoughts on the Yanagisawa Classical SC120 mouthpiece. I think it's a really nice addition, and it's great that Yanagisawa is really putting forth a strong competitive effort versus Selmer and Vandoren. And remember, like I've said in previous videos, competition's a good thing, because when more manufacturers try to get your money, it means the products get better for you and me. Thanks again to Selmer for making this video possible. They sent me the test unit and have been an absolutely wonderful collaborator throughout this process. I'm really proud to be a Selmer artist in this moment because they've supported this idea in this channel so much, so thanks again, Selmer. Be sure to comment, rate, and subscribe. It really helps me out and lets the channel grow, and it also gives me feedback for what you want. If you have any questions about this mouthpiece, any other mouthpiece in particular, or just anything I do with music and saxophone, leave a comment below. I'd love to answer and help you out. Also, if you like this kind of content to do with saxophone, mouthpieces, and other related musical subjects, please subscribe, because there's going to be a lot more of it coming down the road, and I'm very excited to give you guys even more content that's going to be great. Thanks again for watching. This was Joshua Heaney. I'll see you in the next one.